held separately? Which day?
Only
Gasparni?
I don't have the 6-5.
6-5 is the correct one.
Oh, it is 6-5?
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
you said the 12. Okay.
Yeah, 6-5 is correct.
So that was the one you would have
See which op.
So that's this option, which is on the screen up here, and it's 132,792,000 square feet of the new 612, and what that option was connecting to the existing Woodlands Elementary, which is the existing elementary. It's at 70,000 square feet, so a total of just under 200,000 square feet. And so I'm going to go into the district. We came in a couple months ago. There were a lot of staff members, and we did a programming exercise, and it's been kind of worked on, and then the most recent iteration was the May 31st, I think it was, and there's been some minor changes, and what I'd like to kind of just reiterate is this is where we are right now. It's not final, but just to get something on the board so that we can start to develop a floor plan and a site plan, you have to start from somewhere. So you have to choose how many classrooms, how big the classrooms are going to be, how many art rooms, and how many administration spaces. And it's it's pretty well detailed, but there is some flexibility to it, and we did our best to take notes to it to um, make sure that everybody and all staff members' notes were taken, and all the choices that were made and kind of revisions were noted accordingly. This is kind of probably one of the most important tabs. Is the academic um, tab, which talks about
Option is it on? Which option are we on?
2, I think.
on option 2 in that combined. So in this option, what you'll see over here in the new 612, there's 14 classrooms at 845 square feet. There are 2 science middle school general physics rooms at 1,100 square feet. There's one specific for chemistry, one specific for biology at 1,250. Then there's 4 science prep spaces at 300 square feet each. There's a teacher prep for the high school at 600 square feet. This tab over here is just high school. This tab over here is just middle school, and this is all academic spaces. So your English, math, science, and social studies, and then in addition to all the core spaces, you have specific individual restrooms, instructional material storage. So in addition to all the storage they're going to have in their classrooms, each grade level has their own space or shared space for storage. There's small group rooms. There's 3 small group rooms in the middle school, which are each 150 square feet. These spaces were meant for special breakout spaces um, for English language arts or specific training away from the core academic spaces. So if some student needed to be tutored separately, they had a specific space where a teacher could tutor 1 or 2 or 3 students, still within the academic wing. And then each wing has the middle school and the high school have a multi-use studio, which is kind of those 21st century type of spaces that you see in a lot of new schools where collaboration can take place outside of the main kind of classroom space. And that is basically a larger, it's an extended learning area right outside the classroom that students can break out and do. They could do group work, they could do project-based learning, kind of gives you some different flexibility. So we did this for middle school, we did this for high school. You'll see over here, middle school academic came out to 13,000 square feet, high school was 20,000. There's just a little bit more, you know, I think special spaces that high school takes over middle school.
So there's a different grade too.
And that's it. Yeah. And then on this tab, for this particular POR, we also we programmed in the existing spaces for that 70,000 square foot. So of that 70,000, 33,000 was for academic spaces. So while going on, the next tab is special ed spaces. And in the special ed spaces, we have one self-contained classroom at 850. In the high school, we have a specific small group study instruction. We have a restroom shower. We have 2 resource rooms, 845 square feet. So these are pretty basically large classrooms that can fit some MD students and ID students, depending on what the district, what works for the district. And then the elementary school it also has one. I think they've got the elementary portion also has one resource room and, or no, sorry, 2 resource rooms and one small group instruction room. So it's pretty evenly distributed between Woodlands Elementary and the high school for special ed. In this particular case, when we were looking at the 612, it didn't make sense to break out everything from elementary special ed to middle school special ed to high school special ed. So there was kind of a lot of dialogue that went back and forth, and this is just how much square footage we need to build the school. It's not necessarily final. We're not saying it has to be in the middle school or it has to be in the high school.
And question, normally, how many special education students do you have in each school, roughly?
I would say we have roughly 10% of our student population is identified student with disability. That doesn't mean that they're in a special
Right.
dedicated
Maybe
space. They're
right.
integrated into their typical peers.
I mean, typically in our special education classrooms, how many students do we?
Students in the room?
Right.
It would be like anywhere from 4 to 8, maybe 12. Legally, it could be up to 12. So the other is our special ed services include services offered through North Point. So at Woodlands and at the high school, we have North Point classrooms. So those are some students that are our own, but also students in neighboring districts that have similar needs. And so by grouping them, clustering them together with similar needs, you can maximize service benefit, those types of things.
Do we anticipate continuing that service with North Point and
Yes.
hosting that? Okay.
Yeah, I would say yes. When we closed Shawnee and we consolidated, there was a classroom at Shawnee that they relocated to another district. But we do find benefit both for the students that those rooms serve, but also the students in the general school that benefit from interacting with those students. So yeah, I'd like to keep. Yeah.
Is there any kind of like rent or do we
Yeah,
receive a
so-
financial benefit?
Yeah, so
for
North Point does pay us a rent per student per month allocation that is paid at the end of the year. So we're not like taking it to the bank. I mean, it covers the expenses of operating the classrooms. Yep.
So the next tab after special ed that we went to was administrative, and in this particular case, in this option, we have basically we're thinking that if you're going to build a 612, it makes sense to combine the administrative, but that doesn't mean that you're going to lose offices and stuff. So we counted middle school principal, high school principal, middle school. So we came to some counts over here. And you'll see that the middle school's filled out over here. School, high school, and then we tab out over here existing elementaries also have that. So it's totaling out to 3840 square feet. All different types of offices. There's conference rooms, mail work copy room. There's SS, no, sorry, guidance counselor offices, guidance conference rooms, um, health clinic. In a K-12, you more than likely need two clinics or two separated spaces. You don't want a kindergartner going somewhere with 11th graders. It's going to be. So those are the things that we talked through. Next tab is media center. That was a fun one. So we have a high school media center at 1,250 square feet, and we also have the existing at 300 square feet for the worker and storage. Our total media center in this option was about 1,500 square feet.
Yeah, so the high school media center is more of that STEM class that Taylor, I'm looking for Julie, Taylor Dunn, right? Yeah, that she teaches. And Patty, yep. So Taylor teaches it at the middle school in the morning, and Patty has some of those same offerings here at the high school in the afternoon. So it's more of like a makerspace STEM classroom type space. So it's larger than a typical classroom, not quite as large as those flexible multi-purpose rooms that were in the academic page of the program.
School tabs are pretty simple. They're art rooms, one middle school art, one school art, two existing art rooms in elementary. So roughly 3,000 square feet dedicated to art rooms. And music room, we had in the high school we had one instrumental room at 1,800 square feet. We had a vocal room at 1,200 square feet. We had in elementary school we had 1,800 and 1,200 for existing school footage. So total it came out to 4,450. Instrumental storage.
You're just showing the new 6 to 12 here, because that's the subtotal.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think I was. You're right.
The other one is here.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
So this is just the subtotal.
Yeah.
So this is the option with the 6 to 12 and just renovating within as it stands.
Yeah.
So I think what we're trying to show is, this is basically, this exercise shows a checklist of everything that we can think of going into this building. The three options kind of build off each other. Right now, we're just showing the new 612 going 116. So there'll be some different, this was performed with each option, so the numbers will be different. One of the big things too here is, we've gone back and forth, a few different times. This doesn't happen in just one sit down. The school's representatives have taken a look, made sure our people all have spaces. One of the biggest things we want to do through this programming thing, especially if it's a combined school 612, how do we use space efficiently? How do we build spaces that aren't sitting empty? We want to get the most bang for the buck. We don't want to build things that don't need to be built. So we've really thought through, on behalf of the district and that, what programs are being used and are we covering everybody? Will this space work? Will it be full all day? Can it be, used for different things? So I think this is kind of what this exercise is showing. And again, we're not completely done, but we've gone back and forth quite a few times. When we showed you some site plans and some floor plans earlier, they're very sketchy. We're trying to get a feel for that site. Going through this now, we have more concrete, a more realistic look at what we're potentially talking about, which helps us with this layout and make sure things are done. So I think that's kind of where we're at now and the importance of this piece. I know you can kind of get lost in hearing all the different numbers. Different tabs are going to show different things in the three different options. So I think what we're focusing now on is just one, and there are multiple ones. And I think the one we're showing now, we chose it because when we look at the site, when we start looking at that thing, we're looking at the existing school there, we're looking at our new 6 through 12. With all three options, we want to make sure whether it's built new K through 12 or just adding on to Woodlands, we want this a cohesive K through 12 campus. campus wants to work together for everybody, not just 612 and then elementaries over here. How do we make this whole thing work as a whole? So that's kind of where we're at. Why we chose this one is because when we get this 6 to 12 on, we can show you different ways that, okay, the other option plan, we can do this, or Woodlands, we can do this for a new K through 12 on the other side. So that's kind of why we're going to do it.
Yeah, there were some small storage rooms and ensemble rooms also. That's what I was mixing up. Physical education, we've got a 6,000 square foot middle school gymnasium that'll get a full basketball court in there, and then we have a larger 11,000 square foot gymnasium. That's a nice big space that you'll be able to put.
Level, similar to the high school right now.
Anything else on this one here? So there's a plug for the auditorium in this space. We have an 8,000 square foot auditorium. It's in this tab. It's kind of funky, but we put it in here so we could get the square footage and all the calculations are accounted for. So you'll see what that looks like in pretty soon. But just to know that's accounted for.
How many people does an 8,000 square foot auditorium seat? That's our current auditorium seat.
What's that? 525?
Yeah, I think we're planning 500, 550.
Designed, you might not have had the same standards and ADA seats and stuff. So
Not likely. Yeah.
So student dining. This is pretty plug and play. You put in the enrollment and it spits out how big the cafeteria is going to be. Stage is listed.
This is in two spots.
That's the way we're making sure we're happy.
Yeah.
Programming has on two different tabs, but when we move into design phase, it would be pulled together. So see, would say we could have a cafeteria, a stage in the cafeteria. That's why it's on the cafeteria tab.
Pretty much wraps up the programming. I would say, there's a full service kitchen. We did up it from what the calculation said. Our thought process with that was, you're building a 612 right now, and you have Woodlands, but in case you wanted to do PK12, it should be sized accordingly that it has the space to handle that extra equipment. So it's above and beyond just a 612 full service kitchen. And then building service, these are your mechanical, these are your custodial closets, your electrical closets, mechanical rooms, storage areas, the nitty gritty of the building to make it function. Outdoor storage, reception, corridor space. It's a big chunk of the square footage, and it's important. About 29,000 square feet. Essentially, there's some other tabs there, but I will go to. So the total for this project for this scheme was 67 million. It's almost 70 million. Some money in Woodlands, right? This was the option where we're keeping Woodlands up and making sure it's warm, safe, dry. And so there's about $1 million in heating and $1 million in general finishes to bring it up to par. Roughly $5 million was spent at Woodlands, and then almost 61 million for the 132,000 square foot 612. So that's the programming, and so we did do this 3 different times. We did so that was this option. We can go back to. I'm not going to go through POR with all 3 different times. This other one, this is Master Plan 1.1.2. This one is a brand new PK.
Question back on the last one. So if we see a total of what 67.9, but that includes the just basic Redo 5 million to existing structural woodlands. But I think we had talked at one point about, this is let's see, maybe Mike and James about, we probably have enough with the we probably have enough in the PI that so we wouldn't have to do a bond issue for that amount in theory, right? So it would be minus the 5 for that, or
There's a couple 2.4 I think in PI right now, and then with the COPS loan that we've paid off on the original 2002 edition of Woodlands, that was about half of our PI funds that we get every year, so that's going to be back into the PI. So realistically, no, you wouldn't necessarily need to use 5 million, but then that would also, if you wanted to use the PI funds, then that would eat up your PI funds, of course. But yeah,
We have the 1.5 million from the Shawnee proceeds sale. So we haven't spent that, and we could, but we don't want to spend it on something that we might not be staying in for much longer.
is it Star Ohio earning how much?
it's a 5.49%.
Thank you.
All three options have kind of huge notes. Just want to touch on it real quick. Just since the last time we updated 2024, Ohio's OSCC, OSDM guidelines are out, cost guidelines. So in general, their new construction went up by 3%. That's what inflation says. And then renovation costs in general was 7%. So that's what that was. So that came out, and so we showed that because now we have the up-to-date numbers. And same, this is just kind of breaking out what that 16.29% is, and different. All out there. It's all calculation.
About the Reno of
So the Reno, the 2002, it's the square footage for the 612. Is this is the 2002 edition, so not keeping the 70,000 square foot woodland, it's only keeping the newer edition, the 2002 edition, which is 23,000 square feet. So again, it's 4.4 million to renovate that specific space. There's still money that needs to be spent in that space, in those spaces, and then the 83.3 million for 181,000 square foot PK12. So this would still be connecting to Woodlands, just the new portion, but it's a larger square footage, and so it's a larger cost because you're spending more on new. So it's 90.5 million this master plan option. Elementary portion, it says it needs to be 74,000 square feet, and then we subtracted out the 23,000 from the existing 2002 edition, multiplied it by the cost per square foot. That's kind of how we got these options. It's broken out over here, and then adding it up, it comes out to. Maybe you won't sell, or maybe you won't demo the Cormorant or Huron High or something. There needs to be a number there, so you know how much it will be. I would say the last option is just a brand new K12. In this option, if you remember, there's the gas line that divides that site in the middle. This would put the new PK12 wouldn't fit on the left side of the gas line or the west side of the gas line. This would be on the east side of the gas line. So but it's roughly 200,000 square feet, and it's 94 million.
I'll show you on the site plan which option goes which way. Maybe when we bring that up.
Some portion
Yeah,
thereof.
so if we build a new K-12, kids need to stay in school, so we can keep that building operating over there. We can go across to the eastern portion, build over there, where they stay in session, and then eventually build that down. And with the other two options, obviously, we attach them to the existing school, so we can look at, can we fit everything in, make it within the, on the western portion. Anything else? And or anybody else have any questions, program related or master plan related to these three options? We'll look at some kind of plans and see what these numbers relate, towards what could it possibly look like on the site. From what we'll go with next.
Do I have any questions before we move on? Okay. All right.
Okay, so like I said, the stuff we showed you prior to this was a little bit sketchy. It was more of us trying to figure out how does this site work in practicality. Just with keeping that building in, having this gas line, you can see the gas line almost splits it almost right down the middle. And I think we've had the conversation that moving that line, doing anything to that line would be very expensive. So we want to avoid doing that. So the exercise is to see, can we fit everything in on the east side or the west side, depending on which option we're going to. So if we were to look at that option that we just looked at right now, what we're looking to do is keep our existing Woodlands Elementary over here, add a new 6-12 facility to it, and like you said, we want to make this a cohesive campus. I'm gonna lay out right now, and I'll zoom in on the floor plan a little bit more. Now, here's our middle school spaces, our academic core, and here's our high school building. What we're trying to do is have shared resources kind of in the joint area where we can get, access isn't way down over here for middle school kids. I think it's kind of central over here, that these kids can use over here, these kids can use over here. Anything that's particular to their wing, high school, middle school, they're more over here, high school over here. In looking at this and trying to get our drives, our circulation, the parking and all that, we feel this middle school portion, all of this can be one story. When we get to high school, it'll probably be 2 stories. Get everything in this one. We're trying to accomplish here is get a good ring around the building. Just keep a little bit of traffic there, getting, car drop off, getting people onto our site. On this whole site, what it does is it gives us a middle school parking area, high school. Keep bringing things up over on the eastern side and putting this ring in, we start to see, some spaces. What can we do for the space on the site? We're not saying this is the right way to do it, but we're just trying to show how does this look in the future. Here's your existing playground for your elementary. We can keep that a playground space, whether we keep it the way it is now. Something new over there. I think it's a good location over there for that space. We could add some tennis courts up over here and get your parking access to the building. We're looking at sizes of the fields too, what we can fit over there. We can good baseball field over there, football field, soccer fields. We got a lot of space. That's of course using the city property right now. That's the part of it. Kind of on the plan and kind of why things are where they are. As we said earlier, we're trying to share resources. Here's your middle school, here's your high school. Right here's kind of, like we said, your main entrance, your administration areas. Again, as of now, we were just one idea of we can combine space for them to share the resources. as you come into this main entry, you're gonna have to come into a secure vestibule, that kind of thing. Don't get into the building, just control over, and then you can come into the building. What we talked here is, this is your cafeteria space, this would be a nice open space. What we talked earlier about is how do we use spaces that don't just sit there and obviously, it'll be a dining area or super sessions and space. But I think this could be like a real critical space. It almost hinges off the, we spoke of an auditorium, not a performing arts. So what this would do is having this auditorium over here, you're overflowing to there, it's almost like a lobby. So it's a south building and that's space. And same thing over here. If you look at this section over here, we've got kind of our music, our auditorium, all over here. So the music rooms, they're adjacent to the auditorium. And that way, you also have access, if you have your band room, if you need access, you can put a new guy back there, if they can get uniforms and instruments and all that, have access like that. And then shoot their way out. Kind of an athletic court down this middle portion right here. Here's your big competitive gym, your high school gym. Bleachers both sides, locker rooms, all that kind of stuff there. And here's your middle school gym. Again, it's close with this group adjacent over here, but they can work together and they can work, middle school's coming over here, high school's coming over here. So for events at night, what's kind of nice over here is you have these two different lots. We're making kind of a configuration where if you're over on this side, how do you get all the way over there? So what's nice is this space here kind of joins these two spaces. You have access to come into this commons from this side, from the west side, and also from the east side. So for events, you can even bring your team. We're looking to bring our buses over here for a bus drop off. Over on this side, if you come over here, they come into this part. For competitions at night in the gymnasium, you can again bring your away team in over here, have them access into here. And those kind of things. Turn the two spaces all work together. Programming we spoke of not just the academic club, but spaces that are unique enough to this project. Again, the weight room was talked about that was going to be needed in the future. So again, we look at kind of the middle school academic core over here. It's almost a T shape. We have our science rooms. They kind of are a little bit larger. They all kind of work in one similar program. And these are spaces for math, social studies, English, all those kind of things. However, besides laid out. Right in this middle where this kind of T comes together, we talked about that external learning or an extra learning space, collaborative area. This is just one way to approach it. Sometimes we do it where, it's down a corridor and rooms are off of it. I think with the size that we've allotted for that space, it seems to be wanted to be its own space. It's kind of in this conjunction area where everybody's kind of got access to it. Again, not everybody's kind of used to it. The breakout space, collaboration area, various outside typical classroom. For the middle school over there. Central things. Here's kind of that what we call it a media space, but more of a mixed space type area. Again, adjacent to here and pretty adjacent to everything that is. So here across. In the high school area, so we have our cafeteria, our serving area, our kitchen area over here, and then kind of a mechanical area back of the house. So this is over there. And then we get into the school portion. What's kind of nice over here is when you come into here, since this is going to be a two-story space, this is high school, you get a nice, nice height where good circulation can get relevant. These areas over there just to serve kind of like a lounge area for the kids, Now we put special ed just kind of in this area, group them all together, adjacent to the elevators, where they sit up and down, close to the administration, so they're not so we kind of have a wing of special ed. And then again, we go into our classrooms over here. Here's kind of that extended space, that collaborative space, again, in different areas. Two-story space, again, we could get a nice two-story. now we were looking to put maybe art back over here again. Seeing how pieces work and work together and show it things together. It's kind of the second thing. We don't have the second floor plan. But above, you have more classrooms. So basically following the same.
Observation that the high school looks very similar to where we are now, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and our square footage of proposed option 2 is almost identical to the existing buildings we have for the middle school and the high school. So, addition of some of those extra spaces.
Saying this is.
Oh, yeah, I get it. I'm just, those questions are
Yeah.
the cost that might be associated.
Kind of a good visual exercise. See some things, so yeah, we need this, no, we don't need this. What do we do with existing? Go to the part. So we kind of start to see how are these two sites going to work, and again, what's most efficient, what's going to but in that high school become more community and more. Large, like you said, you're seeing some things and you'll just go, okay, this is what happens when we put the building here. This affects this, this affects that. So hopefully that's kind of that you can start to see these things.
Or it's not this question, but like the numbers that we've gone through with programming, and I get that was asking a lot of people what they'd like to have, right? Like, do we feel like there's a gap between that, like kind of a wants list, and like the needs list? You know what I mean? Like, are there certain things in there? Because when we start to talk about like 1,000 square foot, you know, extra feet here, or 1,500, another room that's 15. You know, $416 per square foot, that adds up. We're talking about $500,000, sometimes $1 million a pop, right? Like the music space alone, I think it was $4,450 times 416 was almost $2 million. So I mean, if that's what the cost is, and that's what the cost is, then I am curious to know if there's maybe some room to like still get us usable space, but maybe like be more like as efficient as we possibly can be with that space, understanding that, you know, any extra square footage starts to add up quick. And another question that comes up is Woodlands where we want to put our competitive gym for like varsity sports, or do we keep the space we have here, the weight room we have here? And again, I don't know if the costs are fixed, like if we do a project with a weight room and a gym here, is it still $416 a square foot, or do we have some ability to do things differently or more efficiently? So I throw that out there because some of those are, especially when we're talking about, do we just build new, PK through 12, or do we, try and keep what is, I think, a relatively usable space, at least the new part of Woodlands. Like, it doesn't look like there's that much difference, right? Like $3 million, you could get all new. But I'm also wondering, I mean, if 11,000 square feet is a gym that could be here, if another, 1,500 is a weight room that's already here, then we're probably, like, our numbers are probably a little bit different in reality for you to think about.
I would say the weight room here, what is it? How many square feet is it? 1,100. So our weight room here is larger than that. Now I could see this one maintaining for purposes of like team workouts, right? So different sports teams are working out. This weight room, at least in my head, the way I envision it is it's larger than like a hotel fitness center, but closer to that than what you see when you walk into our current weight room. So it would provide you like fitness equipment that kids can do their workouts in, but you're not going to bring a whole 40 football players in, or the 75 track players or track runners that we have in. They're going to come here to the athletic campus and do that workout there. It's really like more of an enlarged fitness center, for lack of a better kind of descriptor, in order for those PE standards to be met during the class time during the school day. And yeah, that's the other thing too, is like, so we're going to build, whether it's pre-K 12 brand new or make improvements at the existing Woodlands and build new off of that, are people going to be okay with, we're not having a competitive gym here because that's a duplication of facilities, and we're going to have a competitive gym here. We're going to make some improvements to it to make it better. But as long as everybody understands that that's the vision of the district and of the community, to maximize resources and minimize expense, then I think that works. If people say, wait a minute, you just spent like $90 million or $80 million on a school and you don't have a competitive gym, like that seems weird. But for me, I continue to envision this as more of like an academic campus, and down here being more of a athletic community space campus, where again, when all of our students are here learning, down here the residents can be in there using it for community activities, community workouts, and that kind of stuff. And that's where the $1.5 million from Shawnee and the PI could be those resources used to make those improvements here. So the cost analysis that we've been provided do not have anything for field relocation, and it doesn't have anything for improvements at this facility. Yep. So, but we do have those other resources available as far as PI and the 1.5 million at Shawnee. So instead of lowering what we're going to ask the voters for to do the academic project, we're going to ask them for what we need, and then we're going to slowly work on this part of the project over time. So that was my kind of vision of that. I guess to answer your question.
Just to kind of follow up though on the initial question I asked. So we feel like that kind of going through all of the programming, we still feel like there's efficiencies to be gained, or like there's edits to be made to that list, or is it as this is as like smaller, efficient a space as we can possibly operate with?
Yeah, I think we could trim square footage on different classroom sizes and different like gym spaces and things like that, and you might be able to trim like $3, $4, $5 million out of the project. I don't think you're going to take a $90 million project and trim it down to be a $70 million project. Like I don't know. Just the way we've done programming, I don't anticipate that being too feasible. But if it was like, well, our debt capacity is this, and a COPS funding source is this, so if we can get that $90 million down to 85, I think we could do that with programming without sacrificing the core desires and needs of like the instructional staff. Yeah.
Again, this is just throwing it out there, kind of reacting to things.
How the going under the new PK building here. Is there anything about this site that either adds costs or limits your options in a way that adds costs that would be different if you were to find an alternative site that you could just, like, you had no constraints? Or like you had fewer
Yeah, so
constraints?
originally when we saw the gas line, we kind of like, okay, this is going to work. I think we're pretty comfortable with that. It's a large site, a lot of different, not that solve that. So that in itself helps. Just seeing this work with the existing, having a few different sides to the site, I think no matter which option you go with, the cost is pretty much going to be the same. We're not doing anything infrastructure-wise to the site that would be real expensive, correct? In your judgment? And again, we spoke to the three different options, so obviously this is that second one adding in these six twelve. If we were to do the, first, where we save 2007 portion would be here, we could keep this and find a way to do something else with that. But again, we'd have to build on the west side. And then if we're going K through 12, that's part of the simplest. We have this whole over there, where we're kind of building from drive whichever way we want with a gas line of the building across it or on top of it, then you have access. This is showing an easement that will get 20 feet. I think that's we are able to, get drives across it and parking adjacent to the building. What we're doing with that. They're built into the square.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, PK 12 to this point, there would be an increase. There would be, you just have a lot of asphalt.
Obviously, everything we put new onto this site, we have to drain it and so, just our analysis, we do know that there's a good portion of the site. Conversation also with the traffic, cars, getting them on the site, not back into the city, kind of complicated. And that's what we're just gonna show real quickly with this layout. What we're thinking, one way to get the cars coming in off of here, two different options we're showing right now. We have this whole stretch of drive. Back out over that way. That would be one way, which cars off the site, off of like the parkway over there, onto that site, one way. Hey, just looking at it this way. Now if they come all the way around over here and then back down over there. So there's different options we can take a look at. Kind of one of the things that Susan kind of took a look at, and so one more. If we look more contextually with the site, kind of zoom out of just a little bit more, up there. At each road over here, the projects that the city is going to be undertaking for new. Kind of see a little here and all that. It's a little bit more to there, analyze kind of how they work together.
No, this is great. That's great. I was sad that mine ended with this. This is something there was a public hearing in March. But as you can see here, this is obviously really close. Things have been everything phone, but we can start to do this. That beginning of the school year is maybe sometimes a little bit of a kerfuffle. Well, one of them. Many things you have to do. Adding all of the 6 through 12 traffic and the drop off and social times. Having all of those extra things that you can access the school. A traffic thing would be two things to do. first thing is, okay, make estimates about what kind of number we get with the these days. Buses, we can use, if we don't. Enrollment, you're going to have Y trips. I think how later the season are you going to fill out on secondly, are your folks able to do that? And is there a different way? I guess roundabout is going to help you improve your signal because that's something that a traffic study could look at too and say, okay, that consultant is going to work through kind of pay our people are talking about this is how that they can have it today. And I'd wait to maybe a VFW so that bad relative. For it to be get out, but it's worth a try.
Yeah, because that's my concern. So the roundabout, understand safety, comfortable with it. My concern is it's now continuous flow of traffic. Because I live on that side of town, so and I work right down there on Red Beach Road. So like I'm back and forth in that intersection, and the backing up of the cars, but seeing the cars waiting to get out, especially those that need to turn left, is it takes a long time. So now we're going to put all of our high school students and all of our high school drivers in that too, who I've got one who's learning to drive. I see her hesitation, how far she's waiting for a car. So thinking, you know, we have an entire high school of students. The 18-year-olds might be a little bit more confident, but the number of cars there too waiting and just that line, understand we can stagger times and do things like that. But that was actually the continuous is going to make it more difficult for people because right now that light is timed. It's basically a four-way time. So this traffic stops and they're going to sit while that one goes and then this one goes and then this one goes. So it gives you a nice long time where really there's no more traffic moving and people are letting people come out and come in and it it's stopping the flow from this way. And most of the people getting off Rye Beach are going to the west. So that was my observations and some of my concerns with what we would be doing for the folks there.
Yeah, well, one of the things with how your intersection impacts the roundabout as well, because Q's coming in to get for the general traffic. The question about the time of day, we can take if we were to do a study for you, what I would recommend is intersection, specifically surrounding the school. Every time that that would be that 2 hours around. And specifically for your case. So that's something that we have data here, with some data here on the plan. Usually for people, and we'll try and actually drop them off staggered. So I think you have enough data between this project and what we just recommend for here that we could information without having to redo here. Another thing is in and out of this road that we would capture right now would be that what we call background traffic. And then in the project, you don't have to filter that. Where's the change from the signal to roundabout? One of the things that I think kind of offsets the fact that it's a signal is that you have to be slow with it.
restaurant too that's been vacant for years is sold. Do you know, William, how soon are they opening? It's was announced that's going back in, so that'll be a fast food restaurant with a drive-through on that corner. Do they serve breakfast? That's an open question.
Yeah, this is also something that is estimates for how many students, wine that they have estimates for. But again, what we can look at is the next day is we can give you a quantitative view of how we do it. So some of the resources out there, we can do one the center section and they're really simple and create their zones. We can do
It would be a safe assumption.
so we have means to look at these intersections in tandem and kind of give you a visual, like a pretty picture of walking the park zone. How we actually do that and
For this year and next year.
Connect straight to the Lakers. Thing is, if you think of the distances and where they are now out here versus every time at Woodlands, I mean, a lot of the kids that would be making left turns from here onto Cleveland to go Beach, Rye Beach, all that. For the most part now, they would be turning right, like instead of having to go left. So all the, I mean, really the kids would be going left, or the kids in Kearns Township on the west side, right? And then maybe the kids that would go over to Hoger, but otherwise you should be able to jam the vast majority of the high school, that kind of traffic east, as opposed to now we're rolling in central. One nice thing. The word students live, yeah.
we talked earlier, I think our last meeting, the streets here to keep, I mean, I think that's a big concern with keeping kids off of those streets as an easy way, quick way out, especially dismissive. They do, but to keep kids off of those streets.
We have 5 routes and special ed, so 6 buses.
At a certain time.
and I would say at some point in the early part of the process, it's probably still a little too early. I would want to talk with those immediate residents, right? And I would want to ask them, is it more convenient for you if we dead end those streets? Or is it more convenient if Buckeye becomes a one-way south towards the campus and Deerwood goes one-way north away from the campus? So they still have flow in their neighborhood, but they at least know there's not a bus coming down Buckeye and then facing kids walking and a mom driving the van, out. So that, or would it be like down a couple down here? You can see it's like a gravel road they made to connect the two that were dead ends. Yeah. So do we work with the city to say, hey, abandon Maple Way Avenue as an official roadway? Let the school use the part that we need to get around our campus, but then create a little cut through for those residents. And then last would be like a controlled gate, so like a toll booth gate where the buses could have a garage opener type device to open it, drive through, and it closes. But that, for me, really, I want to talk with those immediate residents to say, how do you use the roadway and how do you feel about, because I know there's one that their landscaping trailer is on Maple Way, and I think they live somewhere around there, and it doesn't bother anyone, so we don't, it's not a problem. So that resident might say, well, I still want to be able to access that, right? But obviously, if we're using that more of around our campus, we wouldn't be able to use that for that purpose anymore. So, so I think there's a solution there, and I think input from those immediate residents is probably a good idea. Because Catalpa, which is totally covered by trees in that picture, has that sidewalk walkway that comes through. And, AVG did look at that to say, could we be a dedicated road there? But the houses that are on Catalpa, on Lake Erie, or on Cleveland Road and Catalpa, those two, they're pretty close, like 30 feet apart, right? Yeah, so we couldn't really put a dedicated street there. It would engulf those homes. So, I like that being a walkway for kids, bikes, parents. Yeah, right there. So, so there is potential there that we could have the city adjust that road up, or part of our project is adjusting that road up to create it as a roundabout, or have it be one way, or have it be dead ends. Okay. No. So, if there's any other questions about programming or about traffic study or egress, then we can move on to our municipal advisor talking about funding. Yeah. Mic up.
Having me in, you have those couple of spreads too. Right, while we're waiting, who knows the last time Huron had a state championship track team? Exactly. My class.
Aww.
It was all the talk among the classmates. Okay, so what we wanted to review here was kind of the results of the discussion we had with Rick Jeffries last week about how to set millage. We have we have the three options listed here that we walked into the meeting with: the 67 million, the 90 million, and the 94 million. Obviously, that's a little bit of a moving target, but that's what we're fixed on at the moment. And what we tried to do is then we took the district's maximum debt capacity, which is the special needs that we assume we'll get, and we used Bricker and Eckler's, or Bricker, Creighton, whoever they are now, their calculation of 68,700,000, and we reduced the voted bond issue by that maximum voted amount. Okay, and with the first option, by doing that, we come up with no excess. We were able to cover the entire project, the improved woodlands and the new 612. We're able to finance that entire amount under the special needs limit. So there's no need for any supplemental financing. For the next two options, we do have an excess project cost over the total limitation. And so what we assumed there was that, okay, we'll have to come up with another financing source and therefore another repayment source for that financing. And there's been a lot of talk about certificates of participation, COPs, as being that tool. That would be the financing technique to get it done. The repayment source that's been agreed on or discussed and shown here is an additional levy, a public improvement levy that would generate the necessary receipts to pay debt service on the excess. And then what we tried to do is reduce it all down to millage that would show up on the ballot. The blue highlights are those millage figures. For the first option, new improved woodlands, 6 through 12, we get it down with a 4.5% interest rate assumption on next year's presumed assessed valuation of 6.23 mils. And that was the key to our discussion with Auditor Jeffries last week, would he be satisfied, since we know he is very confident what next year's assessed valuation is going to be. But the state law says to calculate ballot millage, you have to use this year's assessed valuation. So it's going to be a big jump, well over 20% according to Mr. Jeffries. So do we burden taxpayers and the ballot, if you will, with that odd point in time where we're pre-revaluation using the smaller assessed valuation, and then a market interest rate, because that's the one variable that we have, is the interest rate assumption that we use to calculate these. So this version shows the presumption that we'll have increased valuation next year, and for with market interest rates, because market interest rates right now are about 4.5% for a 37-year bond issue. We just sold North Ridgeville a week or two ago, and that's right about where it came in. Okay, so we're pretty confident that's where we're at. So with that interest rate assumption, using the new assessed valuation, we're coming out at these numbers, which, seem fairly palatable, all things considered. Then when you go below the line and look at the two more expensive options, you add back additional millage for a PI levy. You add another 2.5 mils for the second option and 2.93 for the third option. For the totals of 6.23 or 8.77 or 9.2. Again, using next year's assessed valuation with a market interest rate. Okay, and then just to kind of complete the discussion, doing the what if we used this year's valuation, which is what we're going to have to do, okay, but used an aggressive interest rate to come up with the same numbers, okay, the same millage numbers. And in doing that, we come up with a 2.62% interest rate. But again, it's an assumption. It's trying to take everything into consideration, the new appraised value, what we're required to do by state law when we do the ballot calculation. The one piece of flexibility we have is what that interest rate assumption is. So this 2.62, it's aggressive, but if everybody understands the methodology, it gets us to the same place as using next year's assessed valuation, which is when the millage will first be assessed. Next year's assessed valuation with a market interest rate. So we're using this year's valuation at an aggressive interest rate to come up with the same number that we're going to end up with next year anyhow. So I just wanted to show both calculations so there wasn't any confusion.
When will those valuations be published?
It's unfortunately typically officially released after the election.
Okay, so
Yeah.
like December of this year?
December. They always have to happen in December. Not every county auditor, in my opinion, is as insightful as Auditor Jeffries as to how this worked. We had similar situation with Perrysburg schools last year, and that new auditor, didn't want to get his arms around it. But Auditor Jeffries has been helpful.
It's a good partner.
So the bottom line on these, by the way, it's about $1.5 million difference if we do a this year's valuation with a current interest rate, 4.5%, and it would be a higher millage amount. It's about 1.5 mils higher if we used a lower valuation and a market interest rate. And it's about $110 a year per median value home. So that's what we're trying to, get the citizens to understand that it's saving $1.5 million, and it's, would save them in reality having to vote for $110 less a month, because that's really what it's going to be come next
Obviously,
year.
this is assuming this would go to the ballot this November.
This
So if it goes
Yeah.
next year, we don't
It's
have to worry
already in
about
the
that.
books,
Yeah,
right.
and then people are very clear on what that cost is going to be and what they're going on.
And James, do we want to look at the income tax alternative? So this all assumed a PI property tax for the supplemental needed for the overages of the last two projects. We then also looked at what would it take for each of the options if instead of a PI levy, a property-based tax PI levy, we took a school district income tax levy to produce the necessary dollars to pay for debt service on COPS. And basically, as we said, we don't need COPS for the first option, the 612 option, so there is no real math there. For the second option, we took, the way this works, we took a 25% income tax, a 1/4% income tax, a 0.5% income tax, and a 3/4% income tax to just see how, the different options played out. And the sweet spot is in the 0.5 mil. The one rub there is for the brand new PK-12 building, where we appear to be a little short, okay, by about $80,000 a year. We do have ways to structure the debt issue around that little blip, because the assumption is that income taxes basically increase. We've seen the city's income tax increase over time considerably, and so between assessing what the income tax increase will likely produce and structuring options that we can incorporate right from the beginning, I don't see again, this is if you choose the PK-12 option, I think that's is a surmountable problem. Okay, so that's what. And unfortunately, with these income tax issues, we only can increase by 0.25% each option. So you might fall a little short initially, and let growth take care of it. In the second option, the renovate woodlands and the other PK12, you have excess income taxes. So what do you do there? So we checked with bond counsel, we checked with the auditor, and if we collect excess income taxes, then we can reduce the property tax millage on the voted bond issue, so that the net effect is that the citizens get the net effect of the extra 155 that's being produced by the income tax. So there's a lot of, it would take constant monitoring, annually monitoring it by the treasurer's office to know what, but that's simply taking the debt service schedule, sending it to Auditor Jeffries and saying, this is how much we need for the voted millage. So it's not rocket science.
Well, if we were to do, we could reduce the millage,
Property tax millage.
property tax millage, according to what we were saying. But again, like income tax would generally keep going up, where the property tax only, they'll keep reducing it as property values go up, right? They'll just collect the same amount every year. So potentially, if you do part of an income tax too, you could even reduce that.
The actual collection, right?
Collection every year, like you said, every year will be reevaluated.
What would the split be to get if you were gonna split between a bond and an income tax? Like, what would and let's just use 90 million as like a play,
A fun number.
a play. Okay, but like just a play to start, because we know it gets us somewhere. Like, what could a split look like? If we were trying to divide the burden between, we understand we're a community where we've got a lot of households right now that are Airbnbs, and so we don't want to like keep them out of the contribution.
Contributing, right?
At the same time, we also know we have a lot of households where we have seniors. And the good news on a bond is if it's like a 30-year, a 35-year, and I'm sitting in, like, I have an 84-year-old dad, he's probably not going to be in for all 30 years, right, of that. Maybe he will be, but, like, odds are he won't be. But what we want to try and do is, like, shift that, or how do we distribute that burden so that no one population.
And I think the easy way to do that is to, for example, take the middle one where it's 155 of excess. Okay, we would go back to the other spreadsheets and we'd reduce the project amounts that would offset collections from the property tax by that 150, right out of the gates, so you don't have to kind of go backwards and do it. I think that's where you find that sweet spot.
But if I'm going backwards, like what out of bond, from a bond, how much am I looking to generate? From the income tax, how much am I looking to generate of the 90 million? Like, would we do it even, like 45 and 45? Is that possible?
Oh, we can figure that out. Yeah, but what we've
What would
already
the
looked
income tax, and sorry if that's more of a Baird question, but like the income tax millage need to be, or percentage need to be, to generate 45 million over, I don't know, is it 30 years? Is that the magic number?
the bond issue.
Well, we know the bond, we can go up to 37 years, right? But we kind of don't want to do that because we know that we're going to have a maintenance schedule and a replacement schedule in there too, right? So we're not looking to spend to stretch it to the last possible, because it's just going to set up, like 40 years from now, the same problem we have today.
I think it would just take a little bit of work, but we can certainly find that sweet spot. Sure.
Look, I don't know if it's even. I don't know what's reasonable. But
Again, just so I understand, the idea would be equal receipts coming in to support property tax, that's property tax supported, and income tax supported.
Understanding that at some point what's equal may shift a bit, probably not dramatically, but a bit as over the life of
that's not a
the debt,
difficult
right?
thing to do. We can get that to Mike pretty easily.
So like 45 and 45. I'm just curious. And I'm curious on like our end, could we get like this? I mean, is there a spot we could reach where we could accomplish all the things we want to accomplish for $90 million? Like, if like we take a hard look at like this, and I appreciate all the work everybody's done, but like all this work, can we start to like say, all right, we're gonna trim this a little bit, trim that a little bit? We know part of that, get it all done, would include like, because we know we want to give the community something to be excited about, right? And aside from the new school, which is super exciting, but then also here at this activities campus, like we don't want to keep coming back. Like if we come, we want to come and do it all. And that's the option that I'm curious about. Is there a way that we accomplish for the next 50 years for this community all of the big things we want to accomplish? Can we do it for $90 million, and then can we split it evenly so we're not putting too much on our senior citizens? People like me are paying more than our fair share because we're frankly using with active kids we're taking up more than a fair share of resources, and we have the ability to do it. Is there a way to make that all happen?
You're asking me? Yeah. So I would say in the programming that we did, there's class sizes that could be trimmed. So you carve out some of that square footage. Right now we have the 6 pre-K and K classrooms, so the 6 total rooms at 1,200 square feet. So that's a 30 by 40 foot classroom. It's about this size. I mean, it's a pretty big classroom. The little ones might get lost in it.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to like,
But no, I mean,
that, but yeah.
yeah. So we could, you start trim there. You trim somewhere, somewhere else. Yeah. And, yep. And like, I think OFC from AVG, I learned OFCC said, if you have those multi-use studio spaces that I think we want to incorporate as part of like 21st century learning, OFCC will allow you to go down to 810 square feet of classroom. So again, 845 down to 810. Like some people might cringe at that, but then when I put it in dimensions of a 30 by 27 compared to a 30 by 28.3, you're not going to notice that extra linear foot in your class. I don't think you would notice it. I don't know. So I think there's ways that the programming could be trimmed so that like a $90 million project is feasible while still maintaining like the core elements that people are looking for as far as those different flexible spaces and the different contributions for the arts and athletics and student learning.
So giving ourselves flexibility that like we build in a maintenance and replacement schedule, and that we hold ourselves to that as a district, so that again we're not kicking the can down the road so 25 years from now folks are sitting here like we are with kind of a pretty rough task, right? Like there's no answer where we can just do nothing and not spend any money. Like these buildings are coming for us. They came for us this year with flooding and heaters going out and boilers going out. Like it's coming for us whether we.
Water lines.
It's just where we get to spend money. Like more good money after that, or are we going to get something?
At least theoretically, you build a new campus. Your PI our continuous PI that we have for at least 5 or 6 years shouldn't be too drained by that new campus. So we could use that PI to make permanent improvements down here. So that's money that a revenue source we already have. A long time ago, the voters approved it. So, but then having a plan so that okay, these projects need to be done in a way that we don't spend all the money on future maintenance needs that we have in a building that's going to be 8, 10, 15 years old. You do have to start doing some maintenance then. So.
And we can pick up some operational efficiencies even on like today's lighting and today's heating and today's. I mean, right. Consolidated kitchen, consolidated maintenance. So.
Start talking to you about like, because I think when we go to the community and we're talking about dollars spent, we'd like to be able to say our community cares a lot about activities and sports and having space to do communal things. So if we can sort out like what fields we're thinking about we need here and there, and we're maintaining, because we're talking about using PI money on that, but like the cost of moving scoreboards, and I don't know, there's going to be expense there too. And if we can get our arms around a better plan on it, when we're talking to the community, that's the stuff that they care about. That's the stuff that they've said over and over.
I would say like Sabins Field has how many courts do we have now? 5. Tennis courts.
Still 5.
5. Yeah, yeah.
It
Sorry.
didn't change.
Yep. So we have 5 tennis courts. So like we don't. I would say the district would not need to invest in tennis courts. They have some nice softball fields and baseball fields that if we wanted to, we could go and make our own fields right over here in this campus, or we could invest some in partnership with the owner of Fabens Field in order to make that space. And so again, it's coming back to the community, and it's coming back to ensuring that we have varsity caliber facilities for our baseball, softball, and others. But doing that in a way that complements the needs of the community in general, going from there. So, yeah.
So, not to rush the ultimate question, but and that is, I know that the question that you wanted to ask today was like, are we ready to ask the voters for a certain amount of money? I guess to me, I don't know if we're ready to have that discussion, but it seems to me like we have some some decent direction, but a lot of work still to do to me. And if I guess the question is I get the cost of waiting, but I also, to me, rushing to ask a question that we haven't fully formed is not necessarily a recipe for success. And to me, I personally would rather see us bake a plan. I think Beth, you said this. I don't want to commandeer your statement, but I think it was a fair one last time that it's a lot easier to get community engagement and feedback when you show them something. And now you can go at things specifically versus when we just talk broad concepts, but in the absence of any specific direction, right? So, to me, I feel like we've made progress to being we could probably draw something up if we all agreed on what that something was, and then take the time, though, to really start to engage the community, a committee, but I don't think there's any version of that where we have a successful campaign this November. Even just thinking of the noise of the national political landscape and the hot mess that's going to be coming, with the election, I just don't feel like we're anywhere close to that level of excitement and support and frankly understanding and feedback that we would need to make a $90 million ask. I think we can get there, but I don't think we can get there for November. That's just just to throw that out there.
Just interesting. We've talked about Wycliffe a lot as an example. I went through all of their committee presentations this past weekend, last few days. The interesting thing was their committee has all those meetings, all the content of it is pretty much everything we've done. Architectural meetings, there's a couple of things maybe we didn't do and a couple of things we've done that they didn't do. The interesting thing was they passed their bond levy with a number and maybe a vision. They gave the vision of we want a PK-12 school. That's what we're doing, and we have 17% from the state, which they had. We don't. And then they hired their architect. I think it was the same one that maybe did their assessment, but they went back and did the architectural hiring, the CMR hiring after they got the levy, and then they did a final cost almost a year after that levy was obtained. So we look at them as a successful project, but they also had some unknowns when they did that to the voters too. They picked a number, they went forward with it, and then they did work within those parameters as they got to that completion point 3 years later. So it is kind of interesting. If you pair us, and I know Stacy did a lot of that work, and I kind of was looking at a little more details. It's kind of interesting. Some things were ahead, some things they were ahead at maybe the same point. At this point, it's kind of this month. If we even want a shot at November, there's still 5 months till then. We have to do a resolution in the next week. If we don't even want that shot, then we don't do it. To me, it's if you even want a chance, you got to do resolution 1 in the next week, right? And then you could always not do resolution 2, and then it's done.
I don't think we're ready. And I think the big difference for me with Wycliffe, and that's why everything was color coded, is it was a facility committee of community members, parents, and teachers. And they met every month for a year to build out and to do the work we're doing, but this is primarily led by us in the district. So we've asked here and there for input, but they built a centralized committee worked with their firm, who's excellent at project management, and moved through and facilitated those conversations so that the vision was coming from the users and the frontline users. So that's where I see like a little different. I mean, I'd love for us to do that, and I'd love to see that. But I'd say then that's not a May, like that's next November of 25, and then we're taking the heat off. We have plenty of time to get organized, to create a committee, let people self-identify. That's a campaign committee, a facility committee. And, you know, I'd love to see us set some SMART goals. I want to see a percentage of teachers coming to these meetings and participating. I want to see a certain number of, you know, certain composition on this facilities committee, where parents, where it's teachers, where it's community members. You know, I'd like to see, because I think we say things, but then I think it means different things to each of us. Like we say we want community input, and so I think some feel like we've had it, and I'm sitting here feeling like this isn't my idea of it, and I'd like to see more. So that's where I'm trying to think of like, okay, let's put some metrics to it. Let's do some SMART goals and set a timeline and start working towards, this is our planning phase, and we know our decision date, and we're going to work towards it, and these are the steps we want to take additionally to put in there.
That's totally fair. I mean, we decided as a board that like everybody wanted to be on the committee, so this was our committee with all these meetings, the workshops, and all that. I mean, so maybe that was the wrong stepping stone back in January, but if that's where we're at now.
Oh, yeah,
Because they have 20 people,
It's just different.
but they had 20 people on a committee, and we've had upwards of 20 here, and now it's just us and a few people, right? I mean, we've kind of flexed through all of those meetings, but
You can't. I mean, we. I have to kind of echo the thought of. I don't relish the thought of going in front of the voters this November with what we have now, just with what we've dealt with in the past with levies in our community. I think we would not have a chance. We struggled to have somebody raise their hand to say they want to be part of a planning facility committee. We struggled to have someone raise their hand to say they'd like to be part of a levy committee. I think it would be irresponsible of us.
I'm fine either way. I mean, I really just if we even wanted a shot, you have to do that next week. But if we're good and moving on, then
I kind of think it's kind of the ultimate question. We've been maybe punting month to month, but I mean, if we're just yeah, I wonder if we think we've got a lot of good stuff, but I think now rather than spend that time still in flux over are we going this November? What if we just took that off the table and said, what if we put together the best, most like coherent plan where we can answer first, we fully understand it, which I think we're a lot better than where we started, but I don't know that we fully understand that if somebody wanted to talk to us at the donut shop about it, we'd be able to answer questions. Like all of us, and so I certainly would want to be in that realm, and then get that input, feedback of like our collective community. We know we've got a lot of really smart, passionate, dedicated. Like get them something to be excited about, and then be ready to flip it to hopefully a campaign committee. But I do think we got some work to do in that regard. And our ability to do that work is somewhat, there's limits on that. So we do need to get more people in the boat with us.
Well, and I do think it would be a lot easier maybe to get more people in the boat if our committee did not include the 5 of us. If it included 2, maybe, because every time we want to have a discussion about this, it has to be an open public meeting, which there's so many constraints to that. So maybe, like Chris said, we need to rethink how we want to have this look. It just seems it's not productive for all 5 of us to be part of the facility planning.
Just a burden, right? Because then an administrative burden it's a public meeting, and it's dialogue. I mean, we're talking board business, and it's not a dialogue with the community every time we do it. So yeah.
So is there action that we need to take to say, yes, we are, no, we're not. I mean, or we just don't do anything for November.
So I'm hearing like, I don't think there's any formal action, but I just want to summarize what I'm hearing is we want to spend more time, like, and this is good. We want to spend more time with a committee-based work effort focused on getting multiple stakeholders' inputs, so representative state committee. And we want to spend potentially like 12 months having that committee work on that work. And so then I heard, really looking at the ballot in potentially November of 2025. Okay. So, yeah, that's the board's desire, and that's where.
So can I throw out then just one yes to everything you just said? Throw out one more thought, and that is, and we don't have to solve it tonight, but when we've had these three options, they get it gets hard, right, to really get into the weeds of all this. Is there an option that we as a board feel like is one we want to kind of float with this committee? Open to the idea that there may be feedback we get and thing, but like at least one direction we want to kind of go in to get started, so that like rather than all this different stuff which doesn't seem to lead to a lot of forward progress, we're going with, and again I just wrote I wrote down like, can we get it all done at 90 million? And that is like a PK through 12, this activities campus, can we make it happen? And what would that look like? But I mean, that's one option. I mean, I know we've talked about a smaller, like a mini version that would almost be 2 phases, and then we've talked about, do we hang on to the existing woodlands? It sounds like played out, that really doesn't save us much money. And limits our almost like geographic ability to move. Right. Darn gas line. So, is it a new PK through 12 at Woodlands?
I agree with you. We should at least set the direction and the vision of where they start, maybe. But then if the money or whatever comes in, then they go, okay, let's go back or whatever. But
if we take a beating, and you guys all know me. Like, I'm not big on spending taxpayer money if we don't have to. But to me, like we take the swing. Like we try to accomplish like the next 50 years now, and not like force the next board in 10 or 15 years, and like everybody always have this constant huge weight and have to go to the community. I think that's a tough task. To me, trying to raise 67 million or 90 million, I know the difference, right? But like, I get the difference. But I mean, to me, it's a huge effort. Whether we do half the work or we finish it all, so why not try to finish it all? So I don't think.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
Right, that
I'm just
number,
saying
right.
That number's going to change.
That's
It's
fair.
going to be a projection. Could we potentially compromise and shoot for May? We'd have 6 numbers. We'd get some cost savings. Do you think that's way too soon still?
My only philosophical objection to May is that's number one, it's a special election, and that's one of those situations where it feels like to me it's March or November, right? There's either ideally it's November because you want to say to the community, nobody was trying to get low voter turnout and jam something down your throat. Like we wanted a free voice to hear on this.
I think it potentially, if we look at November, I think it takes a little bit of pressure. James, Mike, summer curriculum, just normal business stuff, and we can start getting ready for okay, what does this look like, and planning, and then if things kick off in September, October with a committee or whatever it is, then we know okay, that's a year cycle. It's like a campaign committee really needs a year. You really wouldn't give them a year.
I guess I would say shoot for the moon. Bring to have your initial ask be for entire new, and then bring that to whoever is part of your committee, and then you whittle down from there. That would be my suggestion. Whenever you build a house or you do a project, you always shoot for the moon, and then you say, yep, give me the Taj Mahal, and then you whittle it down.
Could we even ask our friends at 82 then to show us some rendering, and I know you showed us new 6 through 12, but what we haven't seen, that kind of what you showed us could we see what the PK through 12 on the east end of the Woodlands, east end of the gas line would look like, right? And then, and we know that there's some money, some other things like, I don't know what McCormick's worth, but that's a thing, right? Like we've got some other, if we have to find $3-4 million, we probably have some other assets and toys that we can figure out, right? If that's the cost of waiting a year, right?
Well, and I want to understand too. I know, and we've talked about it, but us not using OFCC money, because like now if we're talking a $90 million project, like it's over $5 million, and I think we prepared to demonstrate to the voters, no, it's not worth it. And so we're turning down.
Yeah, and I think with that, with OFCC, they would have some restrictions like the 2 gyms and the auditorium that we have in our current programming. OFCC might say, nope, that's got to all be locally funded. I'm looking at you.
Yeah, and no, and I'm saying, but I'm saying because I think we kind of talked about that in the early stages. Like if there were things that we wanted to do locally funded, if we wanted to receive, donations for things, we've had incredibly generous donors without us even asking for things of taking care of, McCormick and Cure. But potentially for some of those pieces, if we did, we knew what it was, and then it's like if the money doesn't come through, then that's the nice to have, but it's not essential. But I just feel like we're talking this much money, like $5.5 million. It's not nothing.
I think the other question though is, are there edicts that they have about like materials and lead silver and things like that that add equal to or more cost than we get from that?
But do we want to not be lead? I know when we haven't did it right, but why wouldn't we want to be environmentally sound? Especially like I always think that we are so close to the lake, like this precious waterway, and like what are we doing to take care to prevent runoff, to like be good stewards to the amazing nature, the bird migration patterns, like what are we doing to help, and are there things we could do?
Am I right to say though you can still give an eye to sustainability? Lead silver though is like a brand, right? And yeah. That would be the only. Maybe.
Forgetting mentality, you just don't have to pay for that. It's like saying harmless organic with a label versus.
I think your point's a fair one. I mean, I think that's a great example of a question that we would be prepared. We would need to be prepared to answer. To say like, hey, here's why we made that decision. We didn't feel like the cost of going with the OFCCC, it outweighed the benefit. So could we get that, like the plan, the rendering, like not just of Woodlands, but then also what this activities campus could look like?
Yeah, we can. I think, it comes with time and expense, but.
And then it gives us like a visual.
It looked like he was going to say something.
Yeah,
So
I don't know.
stop.
Every time you guys come, we make you do more work. Every time.
So, but for the whittling down, don't we want the committee, the stakeholder representative committee to give that input on?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Tweak existing.
Yep. So, not to put a damper on this, but I also have a question about what are our budget constraints in all of that we're doing in this planning? I don't believe we've ever talked about that. You know, what we're spending for all these renderings, for Mr. Satsina's input, for traffic studies.
Surveys, environmental studies.
Do we
yeah.
need to have some sort of budget in place so we know we're not gonna go above this, or, you know, I just,
Yeah, so some of those land studies that we've done, we paid along the way, so Mike might be able to rattle
Yeah,
off the cost there.
You guys just sent me the invoice for it. 18,000, I think, was for the land study. We did the environmental one. I'd have to pull that one up. I don't remember, but yeah, the survey.
The surveyors.
Yeah.
I guess have we made a definitive agreement that we're, you know, hiring Mr. Satsina for our levy information, or I mean, I just,
Yeah, so
I don't know.
Baird,
I mean,
Baird provided us some financial information already, and then Mike's been here at the last couple meetings. Both have not had any formal contract of service. I think there was a, like, you can work with us.
We're SEC required to disclose certain information about what we do in order to give advice. Okay, you have to do that. Actually, the underwriters have a similar letter that they have to provide. But historically, you know, I've been doing this 20 years in this position, 10 years in the banking position. It's all pro bono until something happens, and we never get hired officially until there's a bond issue for you folks to vote on. Okay, but it's just the way we do business. We're in it with our clients, and we stay with them until they say no.
Thanks for that.
So I would say, like, costs have been minimal. We also don't want to take advantage of people's time, right? We want to be respectful of that, and you know, that there is a resolution. The attorney, who we do pay that, talked about a resolution for a reimbursement program, and I said, well, tell us more about that. And she explained it as, if we were to go purchase land that we were going to develop a school on, we would want that resolution passed in advance. So once the bond issue passes, which might be 3, 4, 5 years after that purchase, that bond money could go back to reimburse the district the cost of that land
Under the
purchase.
bond rather than like
But
your general
all the
fund.
work that's been done so far is like considered pre-construction, pre-project work, so none of it's eligible for that reimbursement, which is why Mike and I haven't brought that to the board to consider. But there is that. So if we get to a point where it's, you know, we do want to make an investment in, even if it's, you know, infrastructure improvement at Woodlands, because eventually we will be. We're not going to do the Margaretta and put footers in before we have the money. But that might be a time to look at that reimbursement resolution for that purpose. or if the committee leads to Woodlands isn't a good property for other reasons, and we do now find, we do have an option to purchase, then that resolution would want to come in before the purchase so that it can be reimbursed. Yep.
Yeah, and I think it's under 25,000, and you heard the big ones. 20 of it was from those two things. So I mean, I can send you guys everything on it specifically, but unless we talked about it at a board meeting, we're like, we really need to get this survey done. We haven't gone above and beyond.
I think everything is necessary. Everything is necessary as part of the due diligence and understanding this site, that site, what needs to be done, and how would it add.
And some of
expenses.
Mike
It's
and
all
I were.
necessary, but-
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Mike and I were asking BG, like, okay, if we do this land study this year, like, what's the shelf life? You know, we don't want it to be 24 months, and now we have to do it again. And they were like, no, this would cover you for, you know, for the scope of the project. Not 50 years from now, but you know, within a week.
Mr. Santino, you can come on. We didn't mean to keep you at the podium.
I don't mind. But one last thing I would say regarding this reimbursement resolution, there's no cost or burden on the board for adopting that resolution sooner than later. You know, it's always better done sooner than later. Just last word on that, because we've seen others that wait and didn't get the cost.
Thank you.
Question, Stacy, your desire for the project management side, how do we get that part of it done? I mean, because, do you have project
Project management
managers, or would it be the CMR we're talking about, or do we need to?
I think most times it's like the design firm, because that's a lot of what they do, and we're a little bit of like agile project management because we have so many unknowns. But I would imagine that's something you're familiar with. No, project management, from a project management standpoint, right? So like what's our project charter, project plan, you know, the milestones, and all of that. So we're kind of mapping that out. So if like right now we think, okay, great. So we've been in, but now we're formally going to call it, like, this is our planning phase. What is the end date for our planning phase? What are the outcomes? What are the deliverables we want to have? Yes. And I would imagine that you all would do that. So yeah. So like if we were to have a committee, a facility committee getting together, helping to facilitate those and moving that work along, I mean, just like you're doing with the districts now and doing with us.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, right. And what our deliverables are and all of that. So
So as far as
Those
action
milestones.
steps for us, can we get a foundation of this committee started tonight, or can we get a plan together?
I think if we're not gonna be the five of us, then the board needs to decide one or two members want to be part of the facility planning committee. And I think then we go from there.
Like to be part of facility planning committee.
I don't want, I'm fine with not being part. I'm absolutely fine. Not that I don't care. Not that I don't care.
I
But I'm absolutely fine with someone else taking those positions. So, speak now if you want to be part of it. Do we need to make a motion for that? Does there need to be a vote, or we can just all agree?
I don't think you need to vote
Okay.
on any committee unless you want to make it board official.
No, I mean, if we have two volunteers and
Yeah,
no
I
one
think
else
you're fine.
spoke up to be part of it, then I would say Beth and Stacy. Sinners, you are it.
Gonna say I crossed over episodes.
Great, okay. Perfect. That was easy.
to talk about busing, but we are not talking about busing at 8:30 at night.
No. I don't. We can table that. No, but if we could, like the five of us, and anybody like, else who's here listening, if there, and William, if either you or someone else from the city would be interested in being part of that committee too, I think, that invitation's extended because I think it's going to be a necessary partner.
I think township libraries, because libraries get a taxing authority, we're good partners with them. James, you've already mentioned a couple projects that you're looking to do, so like
Right.
we start thinking
Would
about
you,
like
would the board
facilities.
like for me, like we've done for some of those, board representatives, would you like me to post out for people to submit interest to be on the committee?
So-
And then like at the August meeting, so they have all summer to submit their interest. At the August meeting, the board can review those names and work
That's
from
fine.
that
I
list.
have, names of people that would like to do this.
Yeah.
And so I will just give those names to you and you can contact.
Well, we can do a how about if we just do a process? If we're gonna like formally do this, like I like James's idea, just make it open. Anybody can apply to anybody who's interested. We've got some folks who encourage them to submit, and there could be other people that we're not interested yet.
The only thing I have concern about is if I've already reached out to like 5 people who we kind of felt were influential in the community and were a good cross section, age wise, income wise, to be part of the planning facility committee. I don't know that those people that I reached out to will take the time to apply.
Oh, let's make it an and. So this list is already said yes, they're in. And then we're gonna have an open I mean, I'm not looking to keep people out. I don't think it's gonna be a problem.
And then
Needs intern staff and senior probably also.
This is a conversation worth having now, I think. So we mentioned township, library, staff, students.
Specifically teachers, because I know we've had like the maintenance staff has been amazing at participating. All the counseling staff has been really great at participating in the. I really love for teachers. Yeah, specifically.
And I know we have a.
Want to think about it and then just email Beth and me with any, and you can reach out. That would be great.
wonderful.
More.
So do you want people interested to fill out a Google form or just email Stacy and Beth their interest?
Keep it simple. Like we don't need their, I mean, just to throw it. Yeah, but we can also put the posting out there with our information so that everyone knows that they're welcome to bring their.
See what turnout we get, and then something like what we can
Children.
estimate.
Is there any new business that we need to discuss this evening?
Right. Preview for next month is I have gotten several requests about restoring busing. I know we talk about it every year, but I do think it's a fair. I mean, it's an important thing to people, so I'm okay talking about it every year. And we don't have to discuss it tonight, but I'd like if we can be prepared to discuss it next month, if possible. I think we owe it to the folks who are
we
struggling
could-
to get their kids to school.
Yeah, we could definitely discuss it. If in July we decided that we were going to restore it, it might create planning operationalized for that challenge. But it can wait till July. It's July 8th is our next meeting.
Yeah, I have no. If you guys
Have to
wanted
make
to
it a
do
really
that,
long.
right?
Yeah, no, it's a great point.
Yeah, mine is going to be quick. So if you guys want to use that as a work session as well, that is.
Does that give like Chad? I mean, I don't want to does that give you and Chad enough time to consider the issue?
Yeah, I mean I have some information ready for tonight, but
Because I'm thinking the busing in light of the conversation about traffic flows and all of that, like I think that could be interesting if we restore it. And I think we had not that many high schoolers that use it, but if it's 25 high schoolers, that's fewer cars, parents pulling up, and also kids. I think most of them do not have cars if they're doing that. But the thing I wonder too is how many maybe elementary parents are not letting their kids ride the bus because there are junior high students on there, middle school students. And I've heard some parents were reluctant to have that wide of an age spread on the bus. If it did break back out into two, if we might not see the overall ridership go up potentially and help with some of those traffic issues.
And already the afternoon route is 2 tiers. It's middle school and then elementary. So it's just the morning. Morning ridership is lower because parents drop their kids off and then zip off to work. So again, if we went to a 2-tier system in the morning, it would cause the high school to high school, middle school probably have to start 10 to 15 minutes sooner, and the elementary to start 30 to 40 minutes later. And I think that would be disruptive to parents who do the drop and run to work. That's how it was when we used to have busing in the high school, and feedback from staff is they appreciate having kids out before 3 and they can close up their classroom and move on with their day for their kids, their own personal kids, extracurriculars and stuff, than having like that significant time difference.
We had parents present to us before about flipping those times because based on the research that the younger kids could come to school earlier, the older kids could come a little bit later. I don't know if that helps
if
those
we
kids.
wanted to, really be talking about that for the start of the school year, we would have got to talk about that probably in February.
Yeah.
So it takes time to make that big of a change. Well, and that's the other thing. So high school kids with athletics, they're already leaving school early to make it to their event, and so if we did that, they'd miss even more instructional time. So there's that. It's really the athletics, extracurriculars after school that drive it. It's also eHobie that drives it. So eHobie kids would have to start their time. They used to end at 3. They're ending at 2:45 next year, so they're already ending earlier than they used to at eHobie. So, yep.
I think we owe it to folks to have a current discussion and position on it. Thank you.
And other new business we need to discuss. I'm just thinking about my week next week if we end up, because I know how we work as a collective, if we start opening up the conversation about this website even a little bit longer, is there any chance we could move the start time to 5 in place?
Yeah, whatever works for me. So. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I left my phone at home, so.
Yeah, like you have no arm. Thank you everyone for coming.
Anyone else have any new business? No? Good? Okay, we do not need an executive session this evening. Our next meeting will be June 27th, a special meeting at 5 p.m. And then our next regular meeting will be on July 8th at 6 p.m. Need a motion for adjournment.
Business centers,
Yes.
Mr. Rager, Dr. LaFay, Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Mrs. Mass.
Yes. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all. So are you gonna be here after you have the baby?
I'll be back by next Thursday.
And then you'll.
I think I'm gonna take. I think I'm just gonna take like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then June's so crazy for me.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry that came out that way when I was like,
I'll probably take like the rest of the week.
that sounded a little aggressive, and so.
But there's a lot to get done in that week. So.
Yeah.
But like I said.
George really had all wanted to be on it, and he came out.
Oh, no, that's fine. No, it's fine.
I just wanted to clarify. I didn't mean it.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, William.
What do you think, Eddie?
Probably. Well, we can ask the
Eddie
but
was-
had Eddie expressed
Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay.
Good job, everybody.
Yes, I know. I'm feeling it.
same with Albany and schools like
Yeah.
As an undergrad, love it.
Yeah, she really, and then Xavier, which they're so good.
Yeah, they are. Like,
When you're done, I want to tell you something. I want you guys, I want you to be done. Meredith got an externship for the fall with Friedman, Gilbert, and Geerstein. Yes. Yes. She's doing, yeah.
I love that. So, okay, so this guy used to be in this like outside named Sanchez. But they were over there. Al was over there on the side after. So when he was in places, Al would always like he did tennis teams and he'd do civil rights in the room. And they're like,
Yeah.
frequently